In this tutorial, we'll demonstrate how to use the Movement Definitions input dialog to set up vehicle movement classes and origin to destination movements in SIDRA Intersection 7. For demonstration purposes, we'll continue to use the roundabout, sign control, and signals site examples created and saved in the Site Input Intersection Dialog video tutorial. Open the project Site Input 1L and save it as Site Input 2L. Let's start with the roundabout example. Select the roundabout site in the project pane. Rename the site as Roundabout 2L and then save the project. Click Layout to view the layout picture of the site that was configured in the intersection dialog. Click Movement Definitions in the Site Input section of the project pane to open the dialog. It's important to modify this dialog immediately after the intersection dialog and before the lane geometry dialog, as data given in this dialog determines the structure of movement data in all other dialogs. 6 standard movement classes and 6 user-defined movement classes are available as seen under the Movement Classes tab of the dialog. The 2 movement classes, light vehicles and heavy vehicles, are always included. For other classes, you can check the box next to the movement class to include that class. Please refer to the user guide for the definition of the movement classes used in SIDRA Intersection 7. Let's check the box next to buses in the table with the heading Select to include Standard to include this class. Let's also add taxis as a user-defined movement class. To include this class, check the box next to User Class 1 in the table with the heading Select to include User. In the next 2 columns, specify the movement class name as Taxis and the movement class ID as TX. These movement classes will appear in various input dialogs. Each additional movement class must be allocated to at least 1 lane in the lane geometry dialog. This and other aspects of lane discipline specifications are demonstrated in the lane geometry video tutorial. Now, click the Origin Destination (OD) Movements tab. The Approach selector in this tab displays the intersection configuration as set previously in the intersection dialog. All possible OD movements at this intersection are shown in this dialog. The OD movements that exist are the ones with checked boxes. Let's select the west leg and add a U-turn by checking the Movement Exists box in the U-turn movement column. If you introduce OD movements, you need to allocate them to individual lanes in the lane geometry dialog, as in the case of movement classes. All existing OD movements must be allocated to at least 1 lane in the lane geometry dialog. Click OK to accept the changes and close the dialog. Save the project. Close the layout display. Now, let's select the Sign Control site in the project pane. Rename the site as Sign Control 2L and then save the project. Click Layout to view the layout picture of the site that was configured in the intersection dialog. Then, open the Movement Definitions dialog. As an example, let's include the Large Trucks Movement class in this site. This new class must be allocated to at least 1 lane in the lane geometry dialog. Let's leave the OD movement definitions unchanged for this site. Click OK to accept the changes and close the dialog. Save the project. Close the layout display. Now let's select the Signals site in the project pane. Click Layout to view the layout picture of the site that was configured in the intersection dialog. Rename the site as Signals 2L, and then save the project. Then open the Movement Definitions dialog. Under the Movement Classes tab, check the box next to Buses. Click the Origin Destination Movements tab and introduce a right turn ban on the south leg by clicking the arrow labeled R2 or unchecking the box under it directly. When you remove or add OD movements and movement classes in this dialog, you need to use the Lane Disciplines tab in the Lane Geometry dialog to specify necessary changes. Click OK to accept the changes and close the dialog. Then save the project. This concludes our tutorial on the Movement Definitions Input dialog in SIDRA Intersection 7. We will continue with the configuration of intersection geometry of these 3 sites in the 3-part Lane Geometry dialog video tutorials.